Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Ask Me Anything for the CrossFit Linchpin Private Track, the Facebook group. We do these every Thursday. Today is Thursday, September 30th, 2021. Members submit questions, other members upvote them, and the most popular ones get answered live each week. As I was talking to the community before this official episode started, we've got a question that's just a rabbit hole. It's an innocent-looking question, but it's a landmine, and we're going to dissect the landmine so that other people don't step on landmines in the future. So that's my little precursor to that. But some housekeeping beforehand. Next Thursday, whatever that is, October something, there's a great episode, Ask Me Anything. I'm going to have on my sister-in-law, Abby. Abby's fantastic. She works in the medical field, has for years. She's obviously, my wife's sister, younger sister. And she has lost 90 pounds through constantly varied functional movements and modifications of her diet. And she struggled for a long time with what worked and what didn't work. And she finally got things figured out, and she's on a really great, consistent path. So she's going to be my guest. And so a couple days, we do these every Thursday, maybe on Tuesday or Wednesday in the Private Track Facebook group, I'll put up the Ask Me Anything deal. I've got a before and after photo of her too. It's shocking how much weight she's lost. And then anybody can just throw up questions for her about her journey, about what worked, about what didn't work, whatever it is. So it should be pretty cool. So she'll be standing here next to me live in person when we do that, and we'll answer the question. So it should be good to go. So that's going on. As we do this, like I said, it's September 30th. I'm working on upcoming blocks of training and whatnot. On the block of training starting around November 1st. Yes, I believe November 1st is a Monday. From that workout forward, we're going to have two new additions to the private track. One will be, as I've mentioned before, the wild card option. And the wild card option will be something between the prescribed workout of the day and the scaled option. It'll be somewhere in the middle right there. And it's a wild card. It's up to me. It could vary depending upon what the workout is. If it's a very technically demanding workout, I might keep the loadings and keep the reps, but make it less technically demanding. If it's a really challenging, heavy workout, and obviously the scaled will have a significant reduction in loading, well, that wild card might meet in the middle on loading. It might reduce reps, so it's going to be a wild card option. And I think it's going to be a very warmly received and great addition to the private track. So now I also don't want to have paralysis by analysis, but starting November 1st, I believe there will be 5 options for folks. The prescribed, the wild card, the scaled, the limited equipment option, which is obviously our dumbbells, and then the no equipment option, which is at home, out in the yard, whatever it happens to be. So there'll be 5 variations of the workout of the day to hopefully give you one that fits beautifully. I said there'd be 2 things, so that's number 1. The second thing, starting on November 1st, is that I will be providing goal times for the limited equipment crew. So the dumbbell workouts that we provide every day, they will have goal times associated with them. So that's the 2 upcoming changes, additions I should say. Wildcard option and goal times for the limited equipment crew. So that's that. And, a couple more pieces of housekeeping. Again, for just meetups so we can get together in person, I will be at the Rogue Invitational taking place in Texas at the end of October. So if anybody from Linchpin is going to be there, seek me out. I will see you there. Should be awesome. And then I also will be going to the Cascade Classic. Oh, I should have looked at the dates before this. It's in earlier mid-November. It's the Cascade Classic, and it's in Puyallup, Washington. And so I'll be popping in there as well. So the Rogue Invitational and the Cascade Classic. Let's get some Linchpin folks in person and have a good time. And then the final piece of housekeeping is that that Beyond the Whiteboard has been doing their challenges, right? They did the Grace Challenge, the Deads and Dubs Challenge, etc., etc. There's another challenge coming up in October. Ooh, the Cascade Classic has been deferred until next year. Kelly Harper just told me that. Oh no. Darn it. Well, I'm learning this in real time. In that case, I won't be there. Hopefully, I will see you at the Rogue Invitational. So, BTWB has been doing their challenges. We're going to do a linchpin challenge. That's my intent anyway, in January. So just after the new year, a linchpin challenge. I'm going to come up with what it is. Will we do a cool t-shirt? I don't know. I'm working on it. But a linchpin challenge in January, that's what I'm thinking. So, okay. Housekeeping out of the way. Now, let's dive into today's Ask Me Anything. So the first most upvoted question is actually from you, Kelly. Scaling on push-ups. Why is the scale usually knee push-ups and not elevated push-ups? And by elevated push-ups, that means, using a box or something like that. Your body's at an angle. A lot of coaches love the elevated push-ups. They seem to work the core a little bit more. I just want to know your thoughts on the pros and cons of each scale. I think they're both wonderful. I think if you don't have regular push-ups and you are working your way towards getting push-ups, that you should do knee push-ups, you should do elevated push-ups, and you should do any other variety that you can think of, because the more variance will get you there. And it's funny that you mentioned that. The knee push-ups is always an easy one because it doesn't dictate that somebody has to have a box. If you've got no equipment whatsoever, doesn't matter where you are, you can always do knee push-ups. So they always work, so to speak. And you can make knee push-ups harder if you didn't have a box. You can just increase the volume or do hand release knee push-ups and you won't get shortchanged. And the midline work comes in other places as well. There obviously is midline involved with a knee push-up, not as much as an elevated push-up, for sure. But planks, L-sits, sit-ups, all kinds of other stuff we do regularly develops the midline as well. So, and as a matter of fact, it's funny you say that because in some of the upcoming workouts, when regular push-ups were prescribed, I gave, you'll see in the future, knee push-ups or elevated push-ups. So always feel authorized to do either one. 100% good to go. The path that gets you towards the real push-up is a beautiful path. Good to go. Okay, let's see. Here's the next question, in which I think we're going to spend the rest of the episode on. Oh boy. All right, sorry. That was an annoying sip of coffee. It was not meant to be annoying. This is from Joe P. A number of strength and conditioning coaches who preach that training 3 times a week is optimal due to ample recovery. Can you talk through your thinking on training 5 days with modulating intensity rather than training 3 days and more fully recovering between workouts? Innocent looking question. And I believe that it was written innocently, by the way. So Joe, everything that I'm about to say, because it triggered something in me, is not a personal attack on you. That is not happening. But we're going to go down a rabbit hole here, and it just was sparked by your question. So let's dive into what's going on here. First of all, when I saw this question, the first thing that popped into my mind is I've answered this question, I can't even tell you how many times over the last 16 plus years of being involved in CrossFit. And if I had a nickel for every time, I'd be a very, very rich man. Although it is not always this exact question, it comes dressed differently, but underneath, it's the identical question. This is the format. You insert some opinion, observation, whatever it happens to be, that is not the same as what CrossFit recommends. You cite some sort of expert, university, study, scientist, peer-reviewed paper, textbook, whatever it happens to be, that backs up that position, which is counter to what typically happens in CrossFit. And then you say, CrossFit, would you please defend your position that stands in contrast to said expert, said paper, said university, said whatever. that question, it lives on and it will never die. Again, it comes dressed in different clothes, but it is the same question. There is a serious problem and flaw. And again, Joe, this is not an attack on you. And I'm just very sensitive to this since I've spent the overwhelming majority of my life delivering messages, content, be it live, in seminars, on podcasts, on broadcast, that you have to be very cautious with what's your opinion, what's fact, are you presenting them clearly as to whether it is opinion or fact, is the question a leading question, is it misleading, is it truly neutral? I'm very acutely aware of those things just because of what I do for a living. So there's a serious flaw or problem with the wording of this question. And I attribute, most things come down to either ignorance or malice. And I don't think the question was worded this way out of malice. I think it was out of ignorance. And when I say ignorance, I don't mean anything to do with intellect. Ignorance meaning it wasn't intentional. That's all I mean by ignorance. It wasn't intentional when the question was worded this way. And I'm not cynical or jaded on quote-unquote experts of whatever it happens to be. Expert strength and conditioning coach. This study came out of Harvard. Look at this double-blind peer-reviewed this. Look how big my textbook is. And my exercise science professor said on page 72, it contradicts what you say works. Like, I'm not cynical or jaded on experts, but I'm here to tell you that from doing over 200 live seminars, each one having 50 people in the audience, that's 10,000 people I've been in front of. I have met every imaginable expert, PhD, doctorate, head of the department, NFL strength and conditioning coach, you name it. And believe it or not, there is very, very, very rarely a direct link or correlation between the impressive pedigree of the person giving the opinion and whether or not that opinion is correct. It just has not been my finding in 16 years of real-world experience. I have met countless of these people who are incredibly intelligent, incredibly credentialed, and dead wrong, inaccurate, or misguided. And again, I don't think it's out of malice, okay? Many other strength and conditioning coaches as well, getting back to Joe's question, are not training people in CrossFit, in GPP. It could be potentially just a strength program, more of an isolation movement, etc., etc. Or maybe they are training them in CrossFit. It's somewhat irrelevant because, again, this same question comes dressed in so many different clothes that it's crazy. So now we're talking recovery, right? Well, these group of people who are experts said 3 times a week is optimal. How come you're not doing 3 times a week? Well, we could take out recovery and say, what else have I heard? Kipping pull-ups. We've got all these experts in anatomy and physiology, and they have fancy letters after their names. You're just a CrossFit trainer. You don't have fancy letters after your names. They say it's injurious to the shoulder. How dare you? Why are you doing that? What say you, kind sir? And round we go. If it wasn't the kipping pull-up, I've heard it on high rep Olympic lifting. How dare you? You do high rep Olympic lifting. Here's my Olympic lifter. He has a gold medal around his neck. He says you should not do high rep Olympic lifting. What say you, CrossFit? How dare you? Squatting below parallel. I couldn't tell you how many times I heard that at a seminar. From very smart, well-credentialed people with a lot of diplomas hanging on the wall. It's injurious to the knee. It's injurious to the knee. You're just what are you doing? How dare you, CrossFit? What say you? The GHD sit-up. Oh, let's not even go down the nutrition path. Holy cow. I mean, you want to talk about how many different groups of quote-unquote experts you can find that have studies and papers that led to this and the biochemistry behind it, and none of them agree, and you're doing this, so why are you doing that? I mean, like I said, it's the same question that I've heard. I can't even tell you how many times. It's just dressed differently. This one happens to be about recovery, but it's the same question. So, I'm sticking on this because I think it's important, because I'm a very big fan of critical thinking, of looking at the words that people use, and really making sure we're having a true conversation, just because of of what I do for a living. And I also think this would benefit most people in daily life because it's easy for some people to paint you into a corner with the way that they word a question. And again, Joe, this is not an attack on you, okay? This is just the question sparked these things in my mind. So this is kind of an endless, circular question or argument or discussion or topic. So there are some wonderful credentialed strength and conditioning coaches that are, I'm sure, making fantastic athletes, and they're doing it, working out 3 times a week. And so, now you have to defend why you're not doing that. Do you think if you scoured the internet, which is limitless, in all the countries in the world, and all the universities, and all the sports teams, and all the whatevers it happen to be, would you be able to find some really highly credentialed strength and conditioning coaches that actually think 4 days a week is the golden goose and where everybody should be? That it's not 3, it's not 5. Do you think there's a group out there that thinks it's 4 times a week? I bet you could find them. So then I guess we have to have this discussion again as to why it's not 4 times a week. Why is it not 3? Why is it 5? I bet you could find a group out there that thinks it's 6 days a week, or 5 days a week. Or I bet you could find a group that thinks it's 2 days on, 2 days off, 2 days on, 2 days off, 2 days on, 2 days. I bet you could find any cohort of people with wonderful diplomas on the wall, with a list of impressive people that they have trained, that present a particular opinion that may not be what you happen to be doing. And that is why this is a literally endless, circular, never-ending question. And I have to keep circling back to this. Joe, not your fault. Great question. But these things cross my path all the time, and I want people to be aware of them. So, here we go. The internet is a wonderful thing. I told you this was going to be a potential rabbit hole of me just rambling. The internet is a wonderful thing. I mean, endless sources of information from endless people defending endless topics over and, counter to this, counter to that, everybody putting their flag in the sand somewhere. That's great, because it should spark discussion and debate, and you shouldn't be so staunchly closed-minded that what you're doing is right, that you don't want to hear counter opinions. I'm not saying that. But what I'm also saying is it will never end. And at some point, more information is actually not helpful. I wish I had the exact reference, but there was from a Malcolm Gladwell book that I wrote. He had this wonderful section of the book about how a certain amount of information is really helpful and valuable for you to make good decisions. And then beyond that, more information is actually not helpful. It clouds the discussion, it delays decision making, and it actually does not help things progress. And that's why if you go into some place and maybe, I don't know, it's an ice cream shop, because we all love ice cream, right? And they give you 3 flavor choices. You can probably pick the one that you want. If you go in there and there's 100 varieties, all of a sudden you have no idea what to do. More information actually was not helpful. So, let's see. What is correct becomes apparent. Okay, whether it's 3 days, whether it's 4 days, whether it's 5 days, whether kipping pull-ups are good, whether kipping pull-ups are bad, whether high-rep Olympic lifting works or whether it doesn't work, whether you should squat below parallel or you should not squat below parallel, whether you should eat meats and vegetables, nuts and seeds, some fruit, little starch, and no sugar, or should you eat some other way. The answer and the path becomes clear because it works, because what you're doing works. Everything else is noise. It's noise. And you have to learn to cut through the noise and just worry about results. Is the needle moving forward? Is what you're doing working? Because you will always be able to find something contrary. That will never, ever, ever stop. And this happens in every field. With our 13 or 14-week-old little baby, she's got some issues, whether it's reflux or colic. She's not a normal, just happy little baby. She's got some stuff going on. We have been to a tremendous amount of doctor's visits. a dizzying amount of doctor's visits for this little girl, all of whom are profoundly educated, much to a higher degree than I am. They're all medical experts and professionals in their given fields. And the general family practitioner, after checking her out, does not agree with the pediatrician. Well, now what am I supposed to do? The two experts don't agree. Well, the pediatrician does not agree with the lactation specialist. Well, now what am I supposed to do? All the experts don't agree. I'm getting counter opinions. Well, the lactation specialist does not agree with the occupational therapist that we saw as to what the best course of action is for her. Well, now what am I supposed to do? We've got another contrary opinion. Well, guess what? One of those items made my daughter feel better. And then it became quite apparent which of those individuals was correct, because it worked, because of results. It was clear as day, even though the other people who actually turned out to be dead wrong were highly educated. Their walls were filled with the most impressive credentials that you've ever seen. They had very compelling arguments as to why this was a certain syndrome or illness and why this medication was needed. And they had countless real-world stories to back it up. And you sat there and you're like, you must be right. You must be right. They were dead wrong. Completely and utterly dead wrong. This doesn't just happen in medicine. This doesn't just happen in strength and conditioning. This doesn't just happen in the world of finance. This is just something we have to deal with in life. This is why some of these things are circular questions, arguments that there will never be an end to. Ever, 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 ever. And so at the end, what you have to be concerned with is what you are doing working for you? Is it making you better? If the answer is yes, as simple as that sounds, it's a wonderful way to cut through the noise, and it's astonishing how frequently that works. I've gotten off track. Let me get back to where we're going. What's funny is, the question also kind of puts, CrossFit on the defensive, which is, why is that, right? I mean, the wording of the question, where are we here? Let me get back to the question, immediately puts the counter argument as fact, right? Because here is the wording. Can you talk through your thinking on training 5 days with modulating intensity rather than training 3 days and more fully recovering between workouts? So the question is worded that the other option allows for a more fully recovered athlete. That it's presenting it as a fact, not presenting it as a theory, as conjecture, as hypothesis, as an opinion, as to it depends on the individual. It is now presented in the question as fact, and the other party has to tap dance against what has now been presented as a fact. You could just as easily rework the question as to CrossFit literally is producing the fittest, most well-rounded people in the world. Look at the people that are winning the games. Okay, the heck with that. Look at people that are in police, military, law enforcement, literally saving their lives with their fitness every day. Look at how many people are recovering from injuries and using functional movements as rehabilitative medicine. Look at our masters athletes. Look at what's happening to people in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and literally 70s, where these human beings seem like they are a different species than anything we have ever seen before in the planet. If more data is needed that this is effective and works, I don't know how to present it, quite frankly. And so the question could just quite as easily be, you have these masses of tens of thousands, if not 1 million people that have just never been so fit in the world, and they're doing this. This other strength and conditioning coach thinks that 3 times is the key. Defend that position. Because we seem to have a tsunami of evidence that what we're doing works wonderfully. But the question is worded as if since the other strength and conditioning coach said 3 times a week is the key, that's now true. So that's an issue. That's a problem with the wording of the question. And again, I'm probably just sensitive to that since I communicate for a living. And I have to say it again, Joe, not an attack on you, just useful information, I think, for folks in general. And again, since this is something that I see regularly. Again, somebody will present you with something and then put you on the defensive. For example, they'll say this. You might meet somebody and they go, "Oh, you do CrossFit? I heard CrossFit's dangerous." And then they shut their mouth. And that the way they word that, they now expect you to disprove that it's dangerous. But that's not how that's supposed to work. Here's how it's supposed to work. That person says, "I heard CrossFit's dangerous." And you go, "Oh, okay. Well, now I'm listening, and I'm looking forward to hearing your non-opinion, fact-based, evidence-based reasons as to why that is. You have my attention. Please proceed." They won't have anything, obviously. But that's not how most people do conversations. They just throw a grenade out there. "Hey, Kipping's stupid. You're doing that stupid Kipping stuff, huh?" And then they shut their mouth, and they expect you to defend yourself. That's not how it works. You know, I did many a seminar with Greg Glassman, and got to give him credit. I mean, the man was a gifted orator, and he would say some things every now and then that were hysterical, accurate, potentially vulgar, but hilarious, and just cut right down to what was going on. And in situations like this, he would use the analogy where if somebody would say something like, "Hey, Kipping's dangerous," and then they'd shut their mouth and expect you to defend it, he would say that's not how it works. The equivalent would be, if we're traveling somewhere, let's say we're in Chicago for a seminar, so we traveled somewhere, stayed in a hotel, and he's out in front of this audience in Chicago. He said, "You should think about it this way." He goes, "What if I got in front of all of you, this 50-person audience, and I said, 'Hey, you know what, everybody? I got a unicorn in my hotel room.' I should not then shut my mouth and expect the audience to disprove that I have a unicorn in my hotel room. The audience should then say, 'Okay, well, march that little sucker out here on a leash and let's see it,' aka prove what you said. It's not up to me to disprove it. It is up to you as the person who made the statement to actually prove it." So again, this happens regularly in society. Okay. Wow, already on a different tangent. So, but let's get back to it. Okay, let's get back to there's a group of people who believe 3 times a week is how much you should train because they believe that is what will provide a better level of recovery for an athlete. That's the basis kind of the question, right? Well, now, what it can come down to as well is, how are you measuring that? How have you decided to measure ample recovery? It may not be as easy as you think. And the truth is, if you're using something like heart rate variability, some sort of electronic device, a fitness tracker, it might not be the treasure trove of information that you hope or think that it is. What I would encourage you to do is listen to E.C. Sinkowski, who runs Optimize Me Nutrition, incredibly intelligent woman. Listen to her podcast, The Consistency Project is what it's called. She posted an episode last week, September 22nd. So, The Consistency Project, episode from September 22nd, 2021. The episode is entitled On Measuring Recovery to Optimize Performance. It's very illuminating. The follow-up episode will be next week. Spoiler alert, measuring recovery to optimize performance is nowhere near as easy as some people would lead you to believe that it is. Spoiler alert, period, end of story. What matters then? Are your athletes improving? That's what matters. That is the golden ticket right there. And also, so many other lifestyle factors can influence your level of recovery. Countless lifestyle factors: nutrition, sleep, stress, etc. It's very nuanced, complex, and not as well understood as many would like you to believe, as EC also gets through in her podcast right there. So again, how do we cut through all this and focus on what matters? We cut out the noise and find the right path. Results. That's what matters. Improving your fitness or sustaining your fitness. Depends upon what phase of life you're in. If you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, etc., you could be improving your fitness. If you're in your mid-60s, you might be looking to sustain your fitness. It just depends upon where you are. But improving or sustaining your fitness, your work capacity across broad time modal domains, that is what you should be focusing on. And is your fitness moving in the right direction? And I don't care if you train 3 times a week, 4 times a week, 5 times a week, 6 or 7 times a week. Is it working? Period. End of story. And when we say, and if it is, rock on, carry on, drive on with your Ranger mission. If the answer is no, your fitness is not improving, or you're not sustaining your fitness, or you're having much more of a decline than you should, if you're in your 70s and you've been training since you were 25, your fitness will be declining. So if at some point in time in your life your fitness is declining, that doesn't mean that you're doing anything wrong. So you have to take an honest assessment of where you are in your fitness journey, and then do things seem to be going where they should? If the answer is yes, there's a good chance you're on the right path. If the answer is no, well, then we do have to do some investigating. But keep in mind, it may not be your training volume that is helping or hindering you. It could be all those other factors that I mentioned, such as sleep, nutrition, stress, etc. You have to be very honest with yourself. And improving your fitness in the long term, not the short term, okay? Improving your fitness in the long term does not mean setting a new PR on every repeat workout. You know, I often use that analogy of the fitness stock market, which, by the way, is Linchpin Conversations number 64, if you want to go ahead and just listen to an episode dedicated to that, where if you think about the stock market, let's take something like, for the United States anyway, you know, the S&P 500, the top 500 companies in the United States. If you look at the S&P 500 every single day, it might be up, it might be down, it might be stagnant. If you look at it over the course of a week, you get a better picture. If you look at it over the course over a month, you get a better picture as to, is the general trajectory up, down, or stagnant. Not the individual days, but the big picture general trajectory. Because you're not going to get a PR every day. You're going to train every day, or train on the days that you should, and then some days will be great, some days will be less than great, some days will be right in the middle. But if you take a step back and look at the month, the 2 months, the 3 months, the year, is the general trajectory of that line moving up? If the answer is yes, you are on the right path. That's why, and that's why what we do is it works and it's sustainable. Those are the keys right there. You know, what else was interesting to me about the question in general, because we've gone down so many rabbit holes, why not go down another, is with as unhealthy, sick, inactive, and overweight our society and potentially the world is, it terrifies me to think that there might be some people that have finally mustered the motivation to go from working out once a week to twice a week, till they got to 3 times a week. Now they're at 4 or 5 times a week. They're doing so great. And then they read some blog from some expert or whatnot, and they said, oh, I'm only supposed to train 3 times a week. And now they've reduced the amount that they're moving. The overwhelming majority of people on planet Earth need to move their bodies more, not less, quite frankly. Now, don't get me wrong. You can do too much. You can overtrain, so please don't take what I'm saying in a vacuum without any other nuanced information. But consistency is absolutely key. And the best program, okay, the best program in the world, the best rest cycle in the world, the best whatever it happens to be, is the one that you enjoy and the one that keeps you in the fitness game long term. And that's whether you work out 3 times a week or 6 times a week. It's somewhat irrelevant. Doesn't matter if you're doing 3 or 6. If either one of those burns you out, you get bored and you stop doing it, then whether it was 3 times a week or 6 times a week, it wasn't the right path for you. I'm reminded of Adrian Bosman's, who's one of the sharpest people I know in the entire fitness landscape. Sage advice from Adrian Bosman. I really like this a lot. Where he kind of says, let's say, there's no way to do this, but let's say you could rank all of the gyms, all of the strength and conditioning programs in the entire world, from the number one best, most effective to the least. And let's just say that there were 1,000 of them, okay? Just for the sake of this. You rank them from 1 to 1,000. And number 1 was hands down, unquestionably, the most effective. And number 1,000 was the least effective. Well, the best out of those 1,000 programs for you is the one that you actually enjoy, that you look forward to doing, and that you keep doing, because in the long game, consistency wins. So maybe that number 1 program, even though it's the most effective, I don't know, for some reason, you don't like it. You don't click with the people. You don't feel a connection. You dread doing it every day, so you stop. Well, then what does it matter how effective it was if now you've stopped? Maybe, you don't want to do number 1,000, but if you're somewhere in the top 10%, those top 100 gyms are the top 10% in the entire world out of that 1,000, maybe for some reason, number 33, you just suddenly feel at home, and you love it. And when I check back in with you 10 years later, you're still moving your body and making good decisions, and you're surrounded by people that support you. You have won. You have won. So there's a lot more going into this than meets the eye upon first glance. And that's why, quite frankly, our goal at Linchpin is to provide the best, most sustainable GPP, general physical preparedness, well-rounded programming with long-term health and fitness in mind, while making it fun. Because if it's not fun, you ain't gonna do it. I mean, that's just bottom line, unless you're an android. So you take, that's our goal, and I believe that we deliver on that better than anybody else, and you pair that effective, fun programming with, and I'll go to war on this one, the best community on planet Earth, hands down, period, end of story. And then now you have those factors together. That leads to consistency. That leads to good decisions. That leads to working out regularly. When I check back in with you 10 years later, your life is better. And then you pair that as well with the culture that we've created at Linchpin, where scaling is cool. Listening to your body is encouraged. We have smart people in our communities because of these conversations and discussions and the CrossFit Journal articles that we post and the exchange of free open ideas and information that we have. We regularly talk about these things. We talk about modulating intensity. We even have a weekly video that prepares you for the upcoming, sets the tone for the next week. This is why years go by and people continue to improve. So that was, I think, about a 30 to 35 minute answer on that one question as to whether or not 3 or 5 days a week was the magic response. I hope that was helpful. But there really was a lot of stuff in there to unpack about experts and how questions are worded and defending this position and circular arguments that will never end, and is what you're doing actually sustainable, and are you improving, and does it work? How are you measuring your recovery? Is that metric that you think is meaningful actually meaningful? Is the needle moving forward? There's a ton there. I hope that was helpful. I hope that was helpful. Okay, let's do some Linchpin shout-outs. Let's see. Why is my folder not opening? Okay, here it is. All right, Linchpin shout-outs. Ooh, this one's from July 28th. It got buried in there and I haven't looked at it yet. It's entitled Ice Cream and Beer. It says, this is from Patrick E. Hey all, I need some assistance on the nutrition front. I've always been fairly consistent with workouts, but over the last month my nutrition has slipped a ton, eating ice cream a few days a week, having 3 to 4 beers a night, etc. I'm in the process of moving my family across the country, so the stress level has been high, but I really need to get this under control and I can't seem to do it. Any suggestions or encouragement would be greatly appreciated. Okay. Well, I'm looking at this now and I'm looking at the answers that get posted and how wonderful and encouraging they are, and I cut and pasted this one just because it just shows the support that we had in our community and how people feel comfortable reaching out about a wide variety of topics that don't have anything to do with the barbell and they can get support from that. Okay, one more. This one is entitled Hotels, Choose the Dumbbells. This is from Chris K. He's got a photo of himself wearing a Lift Heavy Run Fast shirt, which is very cool, with a mask on. It looks like a Pittsburgh Steelers mask in a hotel gym, and there's a dumbbell rack there. And he says, got off the plane, checked into the hotel, and immediately did some fitness. Caught up with the limited equipment front squat day. Why do lunges always destroy my legs? The conference I am going to recommended 2 hotels. One of them had dumbbells. The other hotel was much closer. I chose the hotel with dumbbells. That's just absolutely fantastic. So yes, when in doubt, choose the hotel with dumbbells, and life will be fantastic. Okay, that wraps up that very interesting Ask Me Anything. Hope everybody enjoys their rest day, and I will talk later.